The one masculine trait that makes women instantly respect you. Have you ever met a guy who just seems like he's never fazed by anything? It's almost like nothing ever rattles him. He's always cool, calm, collected. He always has a sense of humor and wit no matter what the circumstance. It's like he's the exact same person whether he's talking to his mum, speaking in front of a crowd of 1,000 people, or talking to the woman of his dreams. Nothing ever phases him. He's like a lighthouse in a storm. He's unshaken, unbothered, and is in complete control of himself. And that, my friends, is what we call emotional groundedness. It makes women instantly respect you more, and honestly is one of the most desired traits in a man that is somewhat difficult to articulate. So I'm gonna do my best in this video to do that for you. However, if you see it, you will absolutely understand what I'm talking about. And when you feel it, you will feel it. And guess what? Women feel it as well. Women cannot help but be magnetically just drawn towards men who are emotionally grounded or unreactive. I'm gonna get into exactly why that is in this video, how it works, and also how to build a certain level of emotional groundedness as well. So guys, let's get into the video. What is emotional groundedness? This is you not reacting to the world, but the world reacts to you. Someone who's emotionally grounded understands on an emotional level that they have very little control over the going on around them. So to allow that to dictate how their emotional state is not optimal. And instead, they just control how they respond to what happens around them. So how does this look in a dating context? Well, whether a girl rejects you or you hook up with her, your emotional state isn't changed. See, you don't allow other people's opinions or reactions to you dictate how you should think about yourself. You are the one who is in control of how you view your own value. You don't give other people or external circumstances the power to control your emotional state. Only you do. Also, your self-worth isn't a roller coaster. It doesn't go up and down. It is stable. You control it internally. And you don't chase validation, approval, or certainty from the world or from others. You create your own. You'll often see this trait in CEOs, high-level athletes, and very successful business people. No matter what is going on around them, they stay clear-headed, calm, and in complete control. See, I'm gonna share with you a really important piece of information. Reality is completely subjective. For example, the old adage, someone sees the glass half empty and someone sees the glass half full, is completely correct. And it's popular for a reason, because it's true. We are in complete control of how we perceive reality and how we want to react to what our circumstances are. No matter what it is, everything is up to our interpretation. Whether we want to interpret in a positive or a negative manner is up to us. So in the end, yes, we don't have control over what is happening around us, but there is a certain way that we do control and create our reality with how we decide to perceive and interpret the reality around us. You, my friend, get to choose. And this is a superpower because it will allow you to then respond in the most positive way possible to what is happening around you and take the best possible action, which is more likely to then net you closer to the reality that you do desire. So even when things aren't going, say, the way that you objectively would like, because you're interpreting things in a more positive manner, you're just more likely to start creating the reality that you want. And when you are emotionally grounded and dictate your own reality, women can't help but be far more attracted to you, and they will also instantly respect you because they can see that you don't need anything from them. Now, on the flip side, if you are someone who is emotionally unstable, women won't respect you and you'll feel as if you have very little control over your life. Why is emotional groundedness an attractive trait? Well, it's because it's the trait of a leader. Women are drawn towards men who show qualities of a leader. And if there is one quality that a leader has that is going to be most beneficial for everyone who decides to follow this person, it's to be emotionally grounded. So they are always thinking objectively in any scenario. And again, why is it attractive? It's because If you're grounded, she feels safe with you. She trusts your judgment. She knows you're not easily rattled. She respects you because she knows you're not dependent on her approval. And if she was to test you, what a lot of guys in the community call shit tests, you're not reactive. You don't get defensive. You don't get competitive. In fact, you're not emotionally affected at all. And that really, truly is the best way to overcome a shit test. See, in ways, women naturally do test men to see and test how grounded this person is emotionally, because it is such an important trait in the partner that they're choosing. And if you are to just crumble the second she tests you, then it shows her that you're not this confident guy that you're trying to portray yourself as. Let me give you an example. A lot of guys will misinterpret a girl trying to banter with you as her, say, being rude or mean. And this is a good indicator that a guy is not emotionally grounded, because his ego is so hurt the second she gives him a bit of shit that he becomes defensive. So for example, if she teases a guy, let me give you a simple tease, something like, I bet you say that to all the girls, right? And the guy's like, no, I don't say it to all the girls. What do you mean? F you. Instantly, he's getting defensive. She's like, okay, little bitch, he's emotionally reactive. Or say when a girl gives a guy a bit of shit and all of a sudden he's just abusing her, again, she's like, emotionally reactive. Same as when a guy gets rejected. If he's like, well, f you, you're a we've all seen guys respond like this. This is not you having the upper hand. This is you proving that she made the right decision by rejecting you. So again, let's say she teases you. Instead of getting reactive, see it as banter. She's trying to be playful. If you just start interpreting her giving you shit as her being playful, instantly she cannot help but be more attracted to you. So again, for example, she says, I bet you say this to all the girls. You're like, yeah, I actually do say it to all the girls, but it was, really weird when I said it to my grandma. You're playing into her shit. You're just having fun. Now, this is what we call agree and amplifying. It's you just showing her that you're not taking what she said personally, or even subtly pointing out the absurdity of the tease that she said in the first place. And it shows her you just don't care. You're not emotionally reactive, because for most guys, if they get a bit of shit, all of a sudden their face goes hot and they're like, oh, this girl's giving me shit. They can't respond with something witty or funny because they're taking it really seriously, because either they're really attached to the outcome, they're taking themselves too seriously, their ego's getting hurt, and they become emotionally reactive. What is this? This shows her you're not emotionally grounded. But if you respond with something a little bit more fun and playful, she's like, this mother gets it. He's emotionally grounded. He's able to keep his cool when he's feeling a little bit of pressure, and he can handle a bit of banter. And this is why women love what they call banter, because it is a good way for them to test how emotionally grounded a man is. So often guys take banter really seriously, or they're like, oh my God, she's testing me. Yes, potentially testing you, but she's being playful, and it's your job to be playful back. You don't always need to have something witty to say back, but the most important thing is you just aren't emotionally reactive to what she says, whatever the circumstances are. And this in itself is just more likely to net you the outcome that you desire. It's as simple as that. And again, just as I was saying how we create our reality by how we decide to interpret things, the same is true as just what I was talking about, how the guys who are reactive become butthurt when a girl, say, teases them, but the guys who are emotionally grounded don't get butthurt at all, and they don't take it offensively, they just see it as playful. That is a interpretation of reality. She still teased that person, but you have two completely different responses to her tease. One is emotionally reactive and going to be inhibitory to the desired outcome that you want, and the other is emotionally grounded and is going to be more likely to net you the desired outcome that you want, thus making you more likely to create the reality that you desire. And again, this is how we create our reality, by how we perceive our current reality. We are more likely to create the outcomes and the reality that we desire by perceiving what reality is in a more positive manner, or in a manner that is more likely to net us the outcome that we desire. And we do this primarily by not being emotionally reactive. The more emotionally grounded we are, the more likely we are to see things objectively, or at least not in a negative light. Thus, we are more likely to give a response to our current situation that is more likely to be beneficial to us. So guys, that is why emotional groundedness is so attractive. And I have seen it quite a few times, and you've probably experienced this yourself. You're in a state where you are feeling really good about yourself and you're just kind of self-amused, you're having fun. Girls just seem to respond much better to you, even though you're not necessarily doing anything fancy. Your emotional state is just better. Whether a girl responds not as good or does respond well to you, it doesn't change your emotional state as much. This then is like a rich get richer situation where girls then start responding more positively to you because you just give less of a as to how they do respond to you. There is something about the energy of a man who is so grounded in himself. Women just seem to be drawn towards them. And it's purely because the women are like, why does this guy not care? They're looking at the subtle behaviors coming from this guy. And they're like, why does this guy not give a why is he so detached? Why does he not care? Why is he not seeking my approval? Why is he not trying so hard to get me to like him? And they can't help but just be drawn more towards that man. I've seen it so many times that it is an undeniable law of attraction, in my opinion. The less you are swayed by external circumstances emotionally, the more attractive you will just innately be to women. Why is emotional volatility so unattractive? Well, firstly, if your emotions control you, you're essentially a slave to the world. So other people essentially dictate how you should feel about yourself, your emotional state, etc. You are giving away control of your own emotional state. And your emotional state is something that is incredibly powerful if directed in the right directions. So that's one reason. You just don't have any control over your own life. And that lack of emotional maturity just in itself is innately undesirable to women. If you're just constantly having mood swings based on external things happening to you, then you're being controlled, and you're easily controlled by other things through your emotions. If you have control over your emotions, then no one has control over you. Remember, you don't give your power away. If you get rejected and you just spiral into a pit of despair and pity and self-loathing, then this is not a reflection of your value as a person. This is a reflection of your lack of emotional stability and emotional awareness. And that lack of emotional stability is going to make the process of improving your dating life incredibly difficult, because your emotions are going to be continuously swayed back and forth no matter what the situation is. You can't avoid rejection, you can't avoid people's opinions, and you have far less control over other people's opinions than you might think. So really, you are making the entire process and your life harder than it needs to be. And if you find yourself always running out of things to say, constantly overthinking and overanalyzing what to say and trying to say the perfect thing, then this is usually a pretty good indicator that you're seeking approval and validation from others, which means that you are basing how you should feel about yourself on how people are reacting to you or whether people like you back. Again, this is not a sustainable way to perceive your own value and is going to make you less likely to have what you want in the long run if you continue believing and feeling this way. You need to gain back control of your emotional state. Stop giving it away. Now, when I'm saying this, I'm not saying become delusional and not look objectively at yourself from time to time, but what I am saying is for the vast majority of people, they do perceive their own value and likability as lower than what it actually is. I recently read an interesting study actually that proved this. Most people do see themselves as less likable than how other people do perceive them. However, they then interpret this presumed less likability to others as a reason to isolate themselves or reject themselves from interactions or social environments. This then makes us more likely to make decisions based off incomplete data and a negative assumption of the world that are going to be less likely to help us create the reality that we desire, because we are assuming the negative. Reality is completely subjective, and how you perceive and interpret it is going to dictate how you move forward in the future. Now, I actually have an entire video based on how to become more optimistic, and I'll link it up here for you. This is going to be really useful for those guys who are naturally more pessimistic, and is something that really holds people back in their dating lives. But let's continue with emotional groundedness. Now, just because I'm an absolute nerd, I'm going to share with you the scientific reason behind why our emotional volatility makes us less likely to have success in our dating lives and also makes us less desirable to women. So firstly, when we become emotionally responsive, it kicks in our amygdala. So this is a part of our brain that controls emotions and the fight or flight response. Now, when our amygdala is triggered, so something happens in the world around us that triggers us, so whatever it might be, maybe someone makes a comment, a girl rejects you, something doesn't go your way, someone cuts you off in traffic, whatever it might be that might cause you to become emotionally reactive, it kicks in our fight or flight response. And what happens is this then cuts off the blood flow to our prefrontal cortex. And our prefrontal cortex is what does all of our higher order thinking. This is where rational thought, social intelligence in general happens, and all of our abstract thinking. So if we cut off our blood supply and our ability to use our prefrontal cortex, all of a sudden, we are literally no longer able to think clearly anymore or intelligently anymore. And this is exactly why we make all of our worst decisions during periods of emotional volatility. So something triggers us and we say something that we regret later, or we make a purchase that we then regret, whatever it might be. This is because we literally are incapable of thinking clearly. So the more we're able to become less reactive to the world around us emotionally, we fundamentally are able to use our brains better. And this is why people who seem to be just unfazed by anything that happens around them are always able to be having fun, have a sense of humor, be witty, and make the best of situations and make objectively good decisions during periods of stress, because again, they are regulating their own emotions and they're not being as reactive to the world around them. And because of that, their amygdala isn't being kicked in as quickly. So it's all about gaining control of your mind again and stopping looking externally for how we should regulate our emotions. Now, before I go into how to become more emotionally grounded, I also want to go into the masculine side of things. My original mentor described masculine and feminine energy in a really elegant way. He described it like this: masculine and feminine energy is very similar to our genitals. Masculine energy wants to be pushed onto the world. It wants to penetrate the world around you. It wants to be pushed out. Feminine energy takes the world in. On an emotional level, if you are someone who is looking externally and always being swayed by the world around you emotionally, this is inherently a feminine trait. And this, again, just on a purely energetic sense, on a masculine feminine polarity sense, makes you less desirable to women, because women want a man who is emotionally stable. They want a rock, someone they can always depend on, someone who's going to be a good leader, someone who they know is going to make the right decisions, someone who they trust their judgment during periods of difficulty. Life is not always easy, and they want a man they know they can trust during those difficult times, not someone who's just going to become an emotional wreck under any kind of stressful circumstance. This is highly unattractive. Women in general tend to be a little more emotional overall as it is. Men tend to be the ones who are a little bit more objective and logical in the way we think. And if a man is not objective and logical and he is emotionally reactive, this again just makes him more feminine and makes him less attractive to highly feminine women. If you're someone who lacks emotional regulation and you just get rejected by one girl and all of a sudden you're having the worst week of your life and you just let one person's opinion completely destroy your own view of yourself, then this is a pretty good indicator that you're being a pussy and girls are not going to respect you. So Ben, you ask, how do I build emotional groundedness? Now, this is not something that is going to happen overnight. This is something that happens over a period of time. And it also takes a certain level of self-awareness to get to a point where you have built emotional intelligence, because that is also going to be necessary in order to become more emotionally grounded. It's It's just how it is. So it's not going to be super easy. Step number one, and this is difficult for a lot of men because we're so used to trying to control everything around us. As human beings, we're very good at controlling the world around us. However, in a social sense, the more you try to control what is happening, the more you try to control how people perceive you, the more likely you are to become emotionally reactive if you don't get the response that you wanted. We are all humans, and it's okay to at times feel swings in your emotions. You're a human, but acceptance is also part of that as well. You need to accept the fact that you're human, and letting go of control is really important. Also, a lot of people are attracted to the dating community because they want to be able to like control their emotions, emotionally spike her, and be able to like play her like a puppet. Now, if you've gone deep down this rabbit hole, you've probably realized that you have less control than you would like to think. And yes, you can control how people perceive you to a certain degree, but the more you try to control how people perceive you, the more likely they are to perceive you in a negative light. And that is because women are great at identifying indicators of incongruence. Have you ever heard of the concept of the uncanny valley? Now, the uncanny valley is the point where something is very close to human, so close to human that it actually becomes creepy. Now, if something is very unhuman, say, think about like cartoons, things like this, like it could be cute, it's fine, it doesn't create and trigger this uncanny valley in us. But when something is very close to human, think about like those humanoid robots you see sometimes. They can seem really creepy because they look very close to human, but there's something just off, and that creates something very creepy. Now, women are incredibly good at seeing these indicators of incongruence in men and seeing the true character of the man underneath the mask that he's putting on. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're a sociopath, you're probably better at putting on a mask than the average man, but that's 1 in 100 men, and you right now watching this are probably one of the 100 men who aren't sociopathic than the 1 in 100 who is. So let's go with the average person. And for you, if you're putting on a mask, pretending to be more confident than you actually are, then it's going to trigger a lack of trust in the women that you're talking to, and instantly is going to make them feel a little less comfortable in your presence because they can feel that there is some form of deception happening, and it makes them uncomfortable. So for the guys who got really deep into the highly technical side of pickup, then you've probably experienced a certain level of this before. You've noticed that some of the behaviors you might learn are a little more congruent to your personality. Say like for teasing, you're quite a playful person, and then learning how to tease is just something that was a bit more natural for you, then that's going to be totally fine. But when we're actively being something that we're not, pretending to be more confident than we are, etc., this often will trigger women to feel somewhat uncomfortable. As well as if we're being more high energy than we actually feel, this is a really common way that we are going to trigger a girl's, say, incongruence radar, and she's going to be turned off. So firstly is letting go, motherfucker. I know that was a really long-winded way to describe it, and I kind of gave you some more social dynamics there, but I'm a social dynamic nerd, and I'm going to teach you whatever the I feel like teaching you if I want to go on a rant. So that is letting go of your need to control. Remember, the more you try to control her perception of you, the more likely you are to have her uninterested, less attracted to you, or have that incongruence radar alarm going off in her head that's going to turn her off. Let go of control, my friend. The more honestly you express yourself, the more attractive that's going to make you. Now, I have videos on this. Go through our channel. We have heaps of videos on this. I'm not going to go into details here because, again, this video is about emotional groundedness. And the easiest way to start becoming emotionally more grounded is to let go of control, because you are no longer looking externally for people's reactions in order to feel good about yourself. The more you try to control people's reactions or perceptions of you, the more likely you are to be more emotionally reactive, especially if they don't react the way that you want them to. Then all of a sudden, you are expressing behaviors that are undesirable, but also is just going to make your life less easy as well, because all of a sudden you become this fucking leaf in the wind and you have no emotional control. Let go, my friend. Number 2 is to stop looking externally for validation or approval. This is when you're looking at the reactions of others as to how you should feel about yourself. So for example, you get rejected, you feel like shit, you're like, oh, this is evidence of the fact that I'm unworthy, I'm undesirable as a human being. And when a girl hooks up with you, you see this as indicator that you're a man who is worthy of sex. and you are a desirable person. But this is dangerous because, again, you do not have as much control over people's perception as you would like. And if you are putting people's reactions to you as your sole piece of evidence as to your value as a human being, you are allowing this human being who you barely know and who barely knows you to dictate how you should feel about yourself. You're giving all of your power away to a stranger. It is the exact same thing as you going to a stranger and giving them your bank account details. So if you wouldn't go up to a stranger and give them your bank account details, why the are you going up to a stranger and giving them control over your self-esteem and emotions? And in my opinion, your emotional state and your self-esteem is far more important than money, because this is going to have a direct correlation with the overall quality of your life. So guys, stop giving your power away to strangers who don't know you. I have an entire video on this exact topic as well. I'll link it up here. Watch it, enjoy. It's a bit of a deep dive, but it is incredibly useful for those guys who do notice that they are always seeking validation from the women that they're meeting. Okay, so guys, if you notice your emotional state being really heavily swung up and down by how people react to you or rejections, etc., then yeah, that'll be really useful. Watch the video. I'll also link it in the description for the guys who want to continue watching this, and I'll do it with the previous video I mentioned earlier as well. Number 3 is drop your ego. Now this one's really connected to the previous point, and this is also very connected to my video on validation as well. However, I'm going to go into a little bit of a different direction with this one. When I say drop your ego, I mean an ego is a personality or a identity that you are attempting to push onto the world around you, and you desire the world to validate back to you. So for example, if you're attached to the identity of being, say, like the cool, attractive guy, then you being rejected is going to have a far stronger impact on your emotional state, because all of a sudden you're getting this evidence that is completely contradictory to the identity that you're pushing onto the world, which is I'm the guy who is attractive. This is how our ego us over. It's essentially an identity, and I see it all the time in people on the left political spectrum. Now, I don't want to get too political here, but I'm going to use this as an example because I see it all the time. So, for example, let's say you have someone who identifies as a female, however, they have a big beard, right? They have a big beard, and then all of a sudden they get highly offended when people misgender them. Well, that person is now literally basing their happiness and their emotional state on the reactions and opinions of other people. And every time someone misgenders them, they allow that to completely derail their emotional state. This is not a healthy way to see the world. And right now you are living for the opinions of others, and you are basing your happiness and how you feel about yourself based on the opinions of others as to whether they think whatever the you are, whatever you might identify as, whether it be a man, woman, wolf, penguin, I don't give a fuck. But if you're misgendered and you take it really offensively, then yeah, this is an indicator that you have a huge ego and you are placing your happiness on the opinions of others. And guess what? Every time you place your happiness on the opinions of others, you are going to have a very emotionally volatile life. We want to validate ourselves. We are what we believe we are. You'll see a lot of the time girls on these podcasts calling themselves a 10, even though maybe objectively they're not a 10. However, as a man, thankfully, our behaviors dictate how women perceive us far more than how a woman's behaviors dictate their attractiveness. And as a man, if I genuinely think of myself as a 10, I genuinely believe it to my core. Yes, there are going to be some people who don't believe me, but I'm more likely to behave in a way that is more likely to make me more desirable to women. So it is a more beneficial strategy for men to just think of themselves as a 10, like genuinely believe it, than it is for women. Because for men, we view a woman's attractiveness purely on her physical appearance, and her behaviors are somewhat separate. But for men, how women perceive us, our behaviors and our physical appearance are very connected to each other. And you'll see it in terms of, I've talked about it in a previous video, but I've had clients who say, I've had girlfriends who would rate a client, say, very low on an attractiveness scale before he comes on program with me. And then after the program, she might then rate him far higher in the attractiveness scale, even though his physical appearance hasn't changed at all. I've also seen the reverse of this. I've had a client who worked with us. He ended up in a long-term relationship, and then this girl dumped him, and his self-esteem was quite low afterwards. Now, before he got in this relationship, my girlfriend at the time, and Alex's girlfriend as well, said he was quite attractive. They rated him quite highly, like 8 or 9, something like this. However, after he went through this breakup and all of a sudden his self-esteem was very low, the guy had actually become physically, he'd actually worked on himself quite a lot. He'd gone to the gym, he'd worked on his fashion as well. So physically, he actually looked better. However, funny enough, the girls, when they interacted with him, they perceived him as far less attractive than what they thought he was initially. And that's because of his emotional state had completely changed in the way he was expressing himself. His behaviors were less confident and he was expressing himself less congruently and honestly and authentically. And this then was perceived by the girls as him being less physically attractive. Now, that's how girls describe it. They will describe it as physical attraction because they can't decouple behaviors from physical appearance. So they kind of just, that's the easiest way for them to describe it. But again, what this is just a man's overall attractiveness. And for men, we're more likely to manifest our desired outcome if we just believe we're more attractive compared to, say, women. So even though, funny enough, ironically, men are the more objective sex, we actually do benefit more from thinking in this somewhat delusionally optimistic manner compared to women. Women, it's not really going to help them too much other than make some of them a little more pompous and potentially arrogant. But for men, it's actually going to do the opposite. It actually helps us because we're more likely to perceive and assume positive outcomes. And this then makes us more likely to behave in a more attractive manner. Now, again, I'm really oversimplifying this. And there are some guys out there who are over entitled and aren't willing to look at themselves objectively and put the work in on themselves, and they just think they deserve the supermodel when they themselves are a piece of shit. Obviously, that's the case in some situations, but that itself is a really small minority compared to the majority of men who perceive themselves as less valuable than they actually are. So just be aware of that. Now, I've gone on a bit of a rant here, but at the same time, you don't want to identify or become attached to an outcome or a identity, because when something happens externally that doesn't validate that identity, you're far more likely to become emotionally reactive. This again is going to make you less happy and less likely to express yourself in an attractive manner, but also just in a manner that is more likely to make objective and good decisions, because you lose access to your prefrontal cortex as soon as you become triggered by something and emotional. So just be aware of that, guys. Don't become attached to an identity. Let go of it. What I do if I notice myself becoming attached to the identity of being like this highly successful dating coach who gets lots of pussy, if I find myself becoming attached to the identity, I notice it first because I start getting approach anxiety. You know it because all of a sudden you're way more attached to the outcome or people's perception of you. So approaching becomes way harder. You become attached to the outcome. And again, I talk about this exact phenomena in the validation video, which I linked earlier, and it'll be in the description. But that in itself, I have to notice that and then just start identifying as literally like a student of the world and do everything I can to just destroy my ego, whether that's go out and get rejected a bunch. What I try to do, honestly, at the moment is just identify myself as a spirit in a meat sack. Because we become very attached and we take this meat sack very seriously. Like, this is my meat sack that I've been reincarnated into, see it? And we take the meat sack very seriously. But if I just look at myself as this soul or this spirit, whatever the you want to believe, whatever it is, that is just existing inside this temporary meat sack that is not going to last forever and is going to be decrepit in probably 20 years anyway, then you're just far less likely to take yourself so damn seriously. Let go of your ego, detach from it, and also take yourself less seriously. Stop taking the meat sack so seriously, okay? This thing, stop being so attached to it. Stop being so attached to people's opinions of this thing right here, okay? Let go of it. Give less of a all right? Just take life less damn seriously. It'll make everything easier, and also ironically it'll make you more likely to become more attractive to women and manifest the outcomes that you desire. You'll notice that the people who tend to be more witty and expressive and more magnetic to women and more emotionally grounded also tend to be the ones who don't really take life or themselves so damn seriously. They're more likely to take risks, they're more likely to have a crack, and they accept and are completely okay when it doesn't go the way that they want, but they'll still have a crack. So that is Let go of your ego and don't take yourself so seriously. Let's go on to the next point. Number 4 is cold approach being the ultimate grounding tool. This is the ultimate endeavor of self-development. There is nothing better, in my opinion, for a young man than the endeavor of cold approach to become the best version of himself. I love cold approach so much because it forces you to really look objectively at yourself and find your flaws and improve all of the weakest parts of yourself, because no one's going to point it out better than women are, and nothing's going to bring out those negative attributes of yours better than women, and nothing's going to make you feel more emotions than women. So guys, this is why I love cold approach. Stop hiding behind your phone screens, meeting catfishes and fat chicks on the internet. Cold approach is the best endeavor of self-development that there is. And also really great, once you get really good at it, firstly, it is by far the best way to meet the highest quality women, because you're not competing with 100 schlongs to every single woman on a platform such as Tinder, etc. You are just out here being different to every other guy. But also, once you get really good at cold approach, you get rewarded with sex. So you get all the self-development side of things. Yes, it's going to be scary. Yes, it's going to hurt at times. Yes, it's going to be an emotional roller coaster at times, but that then forces you to become more grounded over time. Nothing will make you more grounded than desensitizing yourself to rejection, to negative opinions, to people saying negative shit to you getting comfortable with not being liked by everyone, to you learning to express yourself more honestly, to you being forced to look internally as to what caused you to become emotionally reactive to something, so that you can identify where your ego has attachments, so you can let go of it and become a more calm, collected, and controlled version of yourself. This is the beauty of cold approach. So guys, nothing will make you more emotionally grounded than getting out there and forcing yourself into situations that make you obscenely uncomfortable. The more you push your comfort zone, the more emotionally grounded you become. But I will say there are two types of people when it comes to cold approach. There's the ones who take it on the chin and learn from it and use it to become better. And then there's the weak ones who can't handle a little bit of rejection, who suck and cry about it and never improve their lives. So there's these guys too. Be aware of that. Some guys, if you're the one who's like, you know what, the rejection, I just can't take it anymore. It just made me feel so bad. I can't do it. I'm just going to sit at home and eat Cheetos and jack off to midget for the rest of my life. Then mate, you do that. That is you weeding your weak genetics from the gene pool. But for the majority of men who have some form of desire to improve their lives, understand rejection is a normal part of the process, an inevitable part of the process, something you will never be able to avoid even when you get really good at this. But what it's really going to do is make you a better version of yourself. So again, you become more grounded, more relaxed, more calm in situations that you used to not be comfortable in. So push your comfort zone, use your comfort zone as a guide to what you should be doing. If something makes you uncomfortable, it means you should do it. If you step out of your comfort zone every single day and you communicate with others and you face rejection and you put yourself in as many social situations as possible, this will make you highly, highly, highly emotionally grounded. There is nothing better in the world. Now, when I say this, guys, we are all human. There is no way to avoid being emotionally volatile in some way altogether. Life happens, shit things happen. You get some really bad rejections sometimes that hurt, or maybe some up shit happen in your family that makes you feel shit. It's okay. You are human. It doesn't mean you need to be this rock of masculinity all the time or to feel no emotion at all. That is not the goal. And if you're trying to bury all your emotions all the time, I don't think that's healthy either. However, being emotionally intelligent, aware of when things trigger you, finding out why it's triggering you, and trying to do your best to become more emotionally grounded so you're no longer having your emotional state and happiness at the whims of your external world and instead regulate your emotions more internally. This is going to be a beneficial endeavor for you in all aspects of your life, but very much when it comes to women, because this will make dates easier, attraction easier, every single part of the process more enjoyable and easier. And women are just more naturally and innately attracted to masculine, unreactive, grounded men. So what does emotional groundedness look like? When a woman gives you shit, you don't get defensive, you laugh it off, and you just don't feel an emotional reaction to what she said. When you get rejected, you don't take it personally, you take it as feedback and then move on. You do not spiral, you do not then doubt yourself, you don't have what we call a neg out, what we call on program when one of our clients has maybe had a couple of rejections in a row and then they're all of a sudden feeling shit about themselves. We have to help them through that emotional experience, which is normal for every man when we're learning this process. So don't think you're different just because you felt shit about yourself after a shitty approach. We all came from there, don't worry, my friend. But that's what we call a neg out. So you're not having a neg out when you're getting rejected. When you're talking to women, you're not as often running out of things to say and you don't care as much about the outcome of the interaction itself. You don't filter yourself and you don't put on a fake persona in order to try and gain approval from others. Social environments no longer feel intimidating or exhausting to you because you're never having to play a persona or put on a mask when you're interacting with others, because you're always being yourself and you never need to put pressure on yourself to perform or have people like you. It just makes socializing a much more enjoyable experience. So you're no longer intimidated or scared, or social environments don't look exhausting before you go into them. You no longer qualify yourself, over-validate, or supplicate when talking to women that you're attracted to, because again, you validate yourself. You don't need her validation or approval in order to feel good about yourself. Now, my final thoughts here, I'm gonna share with you a mindset that I use a lot when I'm out meeting women and I find myself becoming attached to the outcome or being emotionally reactive. And I say this to myself: expect nothing, accept everything. I just continue saying it over and over and over to myself. Expect nothing, so don't expect an outcome. You don't need anything from that person. You don't need it to go a certain way. And accept whatever happens. Be completely okay with whatever outcome happens. If you can genuinely embody this mindset, it will make the entire process of cold approach so much easier. And you want to get to a point where you have all three of these. You no longer need her approval. You don't need the world to validate you or bend to your will. And you also don't need certainty. You can still thrive in chaos. Remember, you can't control the world around you, but you can assign whatever meaning you want to your world and what is happening to you. It's up to you to make the decision as to whether you want to start interpreting it in the way that is more likely to net you your desired outcome. That's in your control completely. And ironically, the more you let go of your need for a certain outcome, the more likely you are to have the outcome that you desire happen. So, my friends, let go. Expect nothing, accept everything. Then watch how women and the world reacts differently to you. But again, we're not doing it for the reaction, but that is just a positive cherry on top of becoming more emotionally grounded and not letting others dictate how you feel. So guys, that is the video. Thank you for watching. I went on some interesting tangents, but you know how much I love the social science shit. If you want to help us with the algorithm, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment. If you are interested in working with myself or Alex, make sure to click the link in the description below to jump on a free call with myself, Alex, or one of our team members. And if you haven't already, make sure to join our private Facebook group where we have tons of free trainings, articles, and sharing a lot of information that's helping a lot of guys improve their dating lives. So if you want that, make sure to join the Facebook group too, and that'll also give you more access to us as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.